So, Mamal, instead of wasting more time, we'll start. Yesterday, what happened is I finished one novel that is there in the first of your syllabus of block one, that is the last of the Mohicans. And so today I'll be starting off with block two that talks about a novel that is Sister Carrie. Am I audible properly, Mamali?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, cool. So, this particular novel, Sister Carrie, was is written by Theodore Dreiser, and it is written in the 1900s. Okay, so the setting of the novel is like you know is a kind of when you're entering into the modernism like setting, it relates to that. And the novel begins, the setting of the novel, that which it is written in 1900, remember this, but the novel begins in 1889. Okay. When 18-year-old Caroline, who is like known as Carrie in the entire novel, Carolyn Meeba, she leaves her rural home in Wisconsin to move to Chicago in search of a better life. Being 18 years old, obviously there are multiple things that are going in the mind. So first time, what I'm doing is I'm telling you the overall story, what it is about, and then we can have a detailed discussion on the characters, the major characters who are present, and the minor characters who are present there. In fact, we should not be addressing any character as major or minor, because each one has a definite role to play, though even though small. And then we will be talking about the themes, and then I'll be discussing the literary devices that are used in the novels. Okay. So, for the introduction, I must tell you that this novel has a setting of 1889. It is written in 1900, but it has a setting, or it begins in the year 1889, when 18-year-old Caroline Meeba, who is known as Carrie in the novel, she leaves her rural home and she travels to Chicago in search of a better life. She dreams of comfort, obviously. She lives in a rural setting, but she dreams of comfort, beauty, success. But in the later part of the novel, we'll have a very, not so expected, ending though. Um, and when she comes up to this, Chicago, she has no money and she has no plan as to what she's about to do. So without a plan, without any or with little money, she has planned to travel out of a rural setting from Wisconsin, and then she moves into Chicago. So Carrie here lives with her sister Minnie and her brother-in-law. But these people, they have a very strict household, and the rules and the merger living conditions, the mere living conditions, in fact, they Carrie does not find it suitable, because she has dreamt of something else, and right now she is facing something else. So really, she is not prepared to accept the life or the struggle that she has to face in the early days. So in the household of her sister, there lived the brother-in-law and the sister Minnie, but they had very kind of strict rules and regulations, for which Carrie is not being able to fit into the setting, or with the people around, or with the atmosphere around. So she finds herself in a very uncomfortable situation, and she works in a shoe factory. And again, the hard labor, the low pay, and the poor environment, they really leave her unhappy. What she had dreamt of and what she sees life in reality is the struggle part, the being poor part. To live in a strict household setting, she's not really ready to accept that in her early days. Then on the train to Chicago, what happened is Carrie met a guy whose name is Charles Drowett, and he is a very charming, a salesman who is traveling. When she loses her job, Carrie loses her job in the shoe factory, and then Drowett reappears, offering her financial help and eventually persuading her to live with him. Carrie, at first, she is hesitant. She's not ready to accept the help, but because of comfort and social opportunities, It brings along, like staying with Druid, there were many social opportunities that she could grab, or there were many comforts that she could avail for. She agrees to stay with Druid. Then one fine day, Druid, what he does is he introduces Carrie to his friend George Hurstwood. He is a respectable middle-aged manager of a fancy salon. So Hurstwood became, and then what happens is Hurstwood is infatuated with the beauty of Carrie. Carrie was a very beautiful lady. She had a beautiful voice and a beautiful, graceful attitude. So Hurstwood falls, not exactly falls in love with her, but he is infatuated by her. Although this man is already married, he is having an infatuation for Carrie. He begins a secret romantic pursuit of Carrie, and in mind, he starts thinking as to how to acquire Carrie through his pursuits, through his attempts, what is to be done and what not. Although it was secret. When Druid pressures Carrie into acting in a play, her performance attracts admiration and she grows more confident. As I've mentioned, she has a great poise, she has a great graceful attitude. Her beauty, it has attracted a lot of admiration from the audience. And to act in this play, she was kind of Druid, I can say, insisted her, or she pressurizes, I mean, he pressurizes Carrie to act in this particular play, and she attracts a lot of admiration from the audience. And what happens in the process is she grows more confident. Meanwhile, Hurstwood's marriage deteriorates. His marriage is failing, it is not working as it should. So he takes a rash move. He makes a very rash move. Hurstwood steals $10,000 from his employer and convinces Carrie to leave Chicago with him, pretending Druitt has abandoned her. Um, he makes up a story where he says that Druitt has abandoned her, and they flee to Montreal, and Hurstwood returns most of the money to avoid prosecution. Later, Hurstwood makes attempts where he could return the money so that he is not prosecuted for the act. He makes his own settlement and he returns maximum of the money that he could. So Carrie and Hurstwood now they settle in New York, posing as a married couple. At first, they live comfortably, but Hurstwood's fortunes decline when he loses his managerial job. Unable to adapt, he drifts into depression, and then Carrie starts seeking independence again and starts working as a chorus girl. So Carrie's beauty and talent bring her stage success. She already had the taste of this particular confidence when she agreed to play a part in the play that Druitt had pressurized her to. Now she gets into the acting career as a chorus girl, and her talent brings her a lot of success, leading to better roles and higher pays. She moves into the world of wealth and celebrity, a very lavish life. What happens in the meanwhile is Hurstwood, he sinks further into poverty and isolation. He isolates himself and he's depressed, and he somewhat moves away or drifts away from the life of Carrie. Eventually, Carrie leaves him without any kind of confrontation. So Carrie becomes a very famous actress, but the novel ends with this feeling that Carrie is left with a sense of emptiness. Although the comfort that she had desired, although the fame that she had desired, although the life that she had desired for long back in Wisconsin, the reason she moved into Chicago for, although she gets a life, she's not satisfied. In the novel, in the end, we find a sense of emptiness, and despite achieving material success, she lacks lasting happiness or love. Neither happiness or love stays with her. Meanwhile, what happens is Hostwood, he is absolutely homeless and hopeless, and then he dies by committing suicide. So basically, from this story, we can know that there are three major themes that revolve in the novel. The first one being the American dream and materialism. The novel questions whether wealth and fame they can bring to true fulfillment or not. Are you really satisfied? Are you really happy with your life, even though you have a lot of wealth, even though you have a lot of fame? Do you really think your life is complete? That is one question which this novel actually, kind of revolves around, one of the themes. Then comes urban life and social mobility. The author, he portrays the opportunities and moral challenges of big city life. The early days of Carrie has been very difficult. The time she tries to fit in, and what are the challenges that a person can face when he or she is moving into a big city. It is discussed as the second theme. Then comes naturalism, where the characters are shaped by environment, desire, and chance, which is often beyond their control. Right. So the naturalism theme, it says that we do not actually stick to whatever we are all the time. Our environment, our desire, to live, the chances that we gave, the opportunities that we avail for, all these things, they impact our lives, and characters are shaped by the environment, and it is beyond their control. It is not within their control. Okay, are you do you have an idea of what this particular novel is about? I hope you have got this. Now coming on to the second part, where I'll be discussing the like I'll make kind of clips of the chapters present there. First, I'll be discussing the summary of chapter 1 to 4. Okay. In 1989, 18-year Caroline Amoeba, or Carrie, she's headed for Chicago, leaving behind a small town of a Columbia City, which is Wisconsin. She carries only $4, a few paltry belongings, and her sister's address in Chicago, which is Minnie. As the train pulls out of as the train pulls out, she becomes aware that a man is observing her. Despite her reserve, she strikes up a conversation with him. The man's name is Charlie Drowit, as like I mentioned earlier, and he's a traveling salesman. And his flashy clothing and talkative ways makes a very positive impression on this girl. In the course of their conversation, Drowit guesses that she has never been to Chicago. He also learns that she is planning to stay with her sister. He offers to show her around the city after some hesitation, and she gives him the sister's address, and he gives him her card. They make a date for the following Monday, and Drowit offers to carry her bags for her, but Carrie decides that she should be alone when she meets her sister. Droid cheerfully, um, agrees to her demands, offering to wait at his distance until he sees her meet her sister. Carrie agrees, and surprised and grateful that someone could be so considerate of her safety, someone could be so caring, she allows her to make him stand in a distance and see whether she has met her sister comfortably or not. And when the train arrives in Chicago, Carrie's sister Minnie is waiting for her at the station, and they meet. Minnie introduces Carrie to her husband, that is Hanson. When they reach her apartment, Hanson is mostly indifferent to Carrie's present. It doesn't make a point whether she's present or not, but he remarks that she should find work easily in Chicago. Carrie studies the apartment and quickly determines that Minnie, Hanson, and their infant son live a narrow, lean existence. They do not have a very lavish lifestyle, which Minnie was actually expecting. And so she creates an impression in her mind that they live a very narrow life. Hanson goes to bed early because he has to wake up for work before 5 in the morning. Carrie decides that it would be inappropriate for Drowit to visit her apartment, so she writes him a letter instructing him to wait until he hears from her again. The next day, Carrie walks to the wholesale district to look for work. Shy and fearful she cannot bring herself to ask for a job at most of the places she passes. Then, after a while, she works up the courage to inquire at a few stores. The owners are alternatively kind and cold, but none of them offer her a job. One man suggested that she should try to get a job at as a shop girl in one of the department stores. But Carrie discovers that stores are only looking for people with experience. and she was completely a fresher in the town as well as for the job. Carrie feels ashamed when she compares her own clothes to sharp, neat apparel of the other applicants. She feels very demeaned with her own appearance, in fact. And walking through the department store, she longs to buy the clothing and trinkets on display, but eventually she finds a job in a shoe factory where she earns $4.50 a week. So Hanson and Minnie here are pleased that Carrie has found work so quickly. But Hanson interrupts Carrie's wild dreams of buying power, buying power of her rage when he asks if she will have to spend any on the car fare. They suggest a tour of the city over the weekend, and Carrie immediately recognizes their emphasis on free amusements. As I've mentioned, they are more into a very lean lifestyle. So they're more into, the free amusements, those who are amusement that is available rather than spending money for anything. Carrie is eager to go to the theater, but she senses disapproval from Minnie and Hanson, where she mentions the idea. When she mentions this idea, they expect her to pay for the food, and she eats in their apartment, but her notions of spending money on entertainment run counter to their plans to profit from her stay in Chicago. So Carrie goes downstairs to sit on the stoop. On the following day, Carrie reports to her job where she is made to sit at a stool and punch holes in a piece of show leather. She finds the work difficult and unpleasant, and her back and shoulders quickly begin to ache. Moreover, she dislikes the crude banter between the other men and women who work there, and she finds their drab and shaggy clothes very disrespectful and distasteful. At the end of the day, she hurries away from a young man who tries to make a conversation. She is not really open to conversations in this place. So this is what chapter 1 to 4 was all about. Then coming to chapter 5 to 8, after receiving Carrie then writes a letter to Druitt. Then after receiving Carrie's letter, Druitt puts thoughts of her aside. He goes to Fitzgerald and Moy's, an upscale salon frequented by Chicago's upper class, to pass the evening. Druitt is on friendly terms with George Hustwood, as mentioned when I was mentioning the summary. I told you about George Hustwood, the manager of the salon, who rubs elbows with the important businessmen, politicians, and actors of Chicago. Druitt and Hustwood chat about Druitt's employers and his latest trips. Druitt mentions that he struck a little peach. That is, met Carrie coming on the train on Friday. Peach is for that is used that he met. Carrie irritates Hanson by informing him that Minnie, uh, she informed him and Minnie that she hated her job, and Carrie is for no sympathy. Her board costs $4 a week, and has already seen enough to know that living with be gloomy and plodding. After dinner, she goes outside to stand on the stoop. This displeases Hanson, and he tells Minnie that her behavior looks bad. Carrie comes to realize that after deducting the cost of living with Minnie and Hanson from a wage, she will not be able to afford a car fare as well. So Carrie's second day at work is as bad as the first one. She thinks that the other women are too common in dress and their use of. Moreover, she dislikes the fact that they act so freely with the men in the factory. It bothers her that men think that she is just like other women. Men on the street seem to be just as free with her. During the weekend, Minnie and Hanson take her to Park, but Harry is unhappy because she does not look well enough. On Monday, she listens to other women talk about their happy weekends with young men who took them out. So Carrie despairs at ever, having enough money to have the things that she wants. Winter arrives, and Carrie needs warmer, clothing. Minnie allows her to keep some of her earnings for a hat. Carrie becomes too ill to work, so she loses her job. Hanson suggests that she go back home, but the fourth day of her unsuccessful search for another job, Carrie encounters Druitt on the streets. He takes her to lunch. The high prices at the restaurant dismay Carrie, but Druitt orders a large meal for both of them. He learns that she has been ill and she has been trying for several days to find another job. She states that she will probably have to leave Chicago and return home. And obviously, this is going to, kind of click a thing in Druitt's head. She reluctantly accepts $20 from Druitt to tide over her, and then he tells her to buy some new clothes and meet him for a matinee show the next day. Now, slowly her wishes were, coming true, although through Druitt. Just give me a minute. I'll put my system on charge. I'm running dry of charge. Okay. Yes. So where was I? Yeah, I was talking about the winters and how she goes out of the house and she meets Druitt and she accepts $20 from him very hesitantly, where he asks her to buy like a few clothes and meet him for the matinee show. Then, while walking home, Carrie realizes she cannot buy clothing because she'll have to explain Minnie and Hanson again, they are waiting at home. And obviously, she would have to explain from where did she get the money. She resolves to return the money to Druitt. However, when they meet the next day, he takes her to buy clothes. Despite her protests, although she's saying no, he takes her out. He also offers to rent a room for her so that she can leave Minnie and Hanson's flat. She returns to the apartment and leaves a note for Minnie stating that she is going to live elsewhere in the city. Afterward, she leaves to meet Druitt under the pretense of going downstairs to stand on the stoop as usual. Carrie wonders anxiously whether she'll be able to get a job. For several days, Druitt takes her out sightseeing, to the theater, and to eat out. Her misgivings about leaving Minnie and Hanson are swept away. Minnie has a troubled dream that Carrie is slipping away from her towards some unknown danger. Druitt invites her steward to his home one evening for a game of cards, wanting to introduce her steward to Carrie because she has moved along with him because he's a friend to her. I mean, friend to him. That is the reason he has invited her steward so that he can make Carrie and her steward meet with each other. Then comes 9 chapter to 12. Then Hurstwood lives in a very fashionable three-story home with his family. It consists of Julia and their daughter Jessica, um, and their son as well, who is George Hurstwood Jr., will even prosper more than Hurstwood has. She's not exactly dissatisfied with Hurstwood's success, but she's still longing for something more. Hurstwood's life is his job, and he spends most of the time there. Hurstwood knows that an indiscreet affair would endanger his comfortable social position. He often goes out with his family in public to keep up appearances to satisfy Julia. Hurstwood announces that he is going to Philadelphia on business and he cannot take Julia along as he usually does. His real plan is to go out with his male friends and have a good time where no one will recognize him. He dismisses the trip as insignificant, but Julia mulls over his failure to invite her. Druitt confirms Carrie that he has invited Hurstwood to spend the evening with them, and Druitt says that he has told Hurstwood that they are married. Carrie asks why they cannot get married in reality, but Druitt pulls her off, saying that he needs to wrap up a real estate deal first. Since Carrie does not really love Druitt, she accepts his vague promise without further questioning. Hurstwood's elegant clothing and manners catch Carrie's attention. She compares him to Druitt and notices small deficiencies in her lover's personality and demeanor. Hurstwood entertains Carrie with a very skilled flair, allowing her to win the card game, which a true gentleman really does all the time. Although he is aware that Druitt and Carrie are not really married, he's careful not to endanger or not to question anything or stop the charade. Carrie takes care to imitate all graceful motions Druitt notes in other women, and in the process, she becomes a girl with considerable taste. She befriends the wife of a neighbor, Mr. Hale, who is a theatre manager. In her conversations with Carrie, Mrs. Hale imparts detailed gossip about the social world of the rich and the famous. And obviously, as we all know, Carrie was always interested in building a name and fame and, a dream of her own, and she was always fascinated by this world. So she tries to adopt all these things from Mrs. Hale. And the music of a skilled piano player who lives across the hall awakens in Carrie a longing for something very undefined. One evening, Druitt finds Carrie in the dark with tears on her face. When he suggests that they, should listen to music, Carrie realizes he cannot sympathize with her feelings. Hurstwood wonders how Druitt came to win Carrie. He feels a strong attraction for her, and he knows that Druitt, whatever he may say, has no plans to marry her. He knew that Druitt was just fooling around. So Hurstwood invites the two of them out to the theatre. The atmosphere of the theatre enthralls Carrie. Hurstwood is in fine form, entertaining both of them. Druitt seem to be a bit dull in comparison. In fact, Hurstwood, however, is unaware that his son is at the theatre at the same night. At breakfast the next day, his son mentions that he saw him there. Hurstwood replies that he went with his friend Charlie Dewitt and his wife, friends of Moy's, who are visiting Chicago. Julia understands that Hurstwood's job sometimes requires him to engage in social outings without her. However, he has several times declined to take her out because of work, including the previous night. Julia continues to pester Hurstwood to go on a social outings with her, and Hurstwood, who in reality finds his wife's company extremely dull, declines because he is too busy. Julia becomes angry and notes that he has time for other people, and the mutual, conflict it grows. Meanwhile, through Mrs. Hale, Carrie learns to distinguish between degrees of wealth. She gazes longingly at stately mansions in Chicago, believing that certain happiness must reside therein. So Hostwood visits her while Druitt is away, and she notes that she does not patronize like Druitt. Hostwood tells her that he knows she's not happy, and then she asks him not to stare at her so intently. He touches her hand, and it startles her. After agreeing not to talk about it, not to talk about the new intimacy, Hurstwood departs in high spirits, and Carrie wonders if she has done something wrong. Okay, there's a question right now in their minds whether we are doing the right thing or not, because Hurstwood knows that Druitt and Carrie, they are married and he already has a family. So there's a question popping up in Carrie's mind whether she has taken the right step or not. Then comes chapter 13 to 16. Hurstwood intends to make Carrie's confession and affection for him. He decides to confess his feelings for Carrie right in front of her. His work schedule is flexible, so he takes an afternoon to see her off. They ride a horse drawn carriage to the prairie outside of Chicago, where he declares that his times with her have been the happiest that he has spent in years. He confesses that he loves her and asks that she declare her love for him. She replies it with a kiss, and she's consenting to it. Carrie rejoices in Hostwood's love for her and agrees to meet again the next Sunday. Mrs. Hale notices that Carrie has been going out riding with another man while her husband is away, and the housemaid, who is fond of Droit, wonders at Hostwood's two visits while Droit is out of town. Gossip spreads through the building, in fact. Hostwood entertains fantasies of pleasure without responsibility. He does not think he is doing anything that compromises his life. Carrie dines with him on Sunday evenings, but she keeps him at a distance, which paradoxically incites his passion even more. They agree to exchange letters in care of the post office in order to preserve secrecy of their affair. Drovat returns from his trip, and Hurstwood tells him that he had called on Carrie once during his absence because he thought she might be lonely. Drovat tells Carrie that Hurstwood wants to go to the theater with them, and then Carrie mentions that he had called on her twice during Drought's absence, which is again a mismatch in both their words, contradicting Hurstwood's story earlier. But Droid thinks nothing of it. Carrie and Hurstwood exchange letters and get their stories straight. Carrie is under the impression that Hurstwood plans to marry her as soon as possible. The evening at the theater goes well, and Droid continues to suspect nothing. A beggar stands outside the theater asking for money to rent a room for the night. Droid is the first to notice, and he gives the man some money. Hurstwood scarcely notices, and Carrie quickly forgets. Hurstwood begins to regard his home life with even greater indifference than before. Julia demands a season ticket to the horse races because she wants to show off her daughter. Hurstwood balks at the cost. In fact, he's not agreed to pay for it, which is $150. The quarreling with Julia, he finally agrees to purchase one. However, his concession fails to heal the rift between them. Hurstwood notices that his family had stopped informing him of their activities. He begins to feel as though they are no longer giving him the respect that they used to. So, in the meanwhile, what happens is Hurstwood and Carrie frequently exchange letters. He urges her to leave Drowitt, but she says they must leave Chicago first because she does not want to get married as long as Drowitt is around. Her mention of marriage shocks Hurstwood. He tells her that he will take her on a trip soon and they will get married somewhere else. He is considering marrying her without divorcing Julia. Droid's local, Elk Lodge plans to put on an amateur theatrical to raise funds for new furniture. They need a young lady for one of the parts and they ask Droid to find somebody. So, shortly before the rehearsals begin, he asks Carrie to do it. She is nervous at the prospect of acting, but also intrigued, and eventually convinces her to do it. He informs his fellow, lodge members, that he has found an actress, giving her name as Carrie Madenda, whereas her name was Carrie Meeber. He tells that Carrie has given her a stage name. He tells Carrie that he has given her a stage name to protect her reputation in case the play is a failure. Carrie studies the part and acts like her part out of it. Her performance is surprisingly good for a beginner, which gives her a lot of fame, which gives her a lot of which made her popular, and she started tasting success at the end of her career. Like she was still thinking how to have a beautiful life, a big dream, how to fulfill a big dream in this new city, and she was not getting any direction. But this particular step gave her a direction as to how to acquire name, how to get fame in a particular field by being a celebrity. She got a taste of the success. Okay, then comes chapter 17 to 21. Are there any messages for me in the message box? No, I guess not. Just a minute, Mamali. Just give me a minute, please. Okay, these messages were sent 15 minutes back, and I noticed them now, in fact. Very good. Because when I'm teaching something, I'm seeing a different slide. I'm referring to a different slide, in fact. Okay, should I continue, Mamali? Are you fine with it? Cool. Okay. So this basically is a very, like, kind of um, Hindi movie stories that we see like that, but the setting has been of 1889 and it is written in the 1900s. Um, so, Mamali, what I'll do is there are a few more chapters. There are, in fact, 43 chapters in this. You can go through the sum if you want. I'll just discuss the character. So, Carrie Meeber is the first character. That is Caroline Carrie Meeber. The protagonist of the novel travels to Chicago to stay with her sister and her brother-in-law Hanson. The cosmopolitan consumer world of Chicago enthralls her, and she constantly wants to buy things. Her first job is a low-paid, arduous position in a factory, a shoe factory. When she loses her job, her sister and her brother-in-law cannot, so she becomes Charlie Drowitt's mistress. They are not married. Afterwards, she and his host would have been, would discover that married life is far less exciting than an affair. So Carrie leaves Host because he fails to provide her with the that she wanted, and she becomes famous, one of the highest paid actresses in the New York City. Comes Charlie Druitt. Charlie Druitt is a charming, flashy salesman with a strong appetite for romance. Although he is warm-hearted, he never takes off his romantic affairs. He provides Carrie with a place to stay after she is forced to stop living with her sister. He also promises to marry her, but she never really intends on following through. He loses Carrie to Hurstwood, and then years become a famous actress, and she tries unsuccessfully. He tries successfully to win her back. George Hurstwood is the manager. This is the third character that I'm discussing about. He's the manager of Fitzgerald and Moy in Chicago. At the beginning of the novel, he is wealthy, important man, and he falls in love with Carrie after meeting her. He tells Carrie that he loves her, but he fails to mention that he is married. After his wife discovers his affair with Carrie and files for divorce, he steals $10,000 from Fitzgerald and Moy, and he leaves with Mom. There he marries her before his divorce. Although he keeps this, his theft secret from Carrie, he is discovered by an investigator and was required to return most of the money in order to protect him.